What's up, you guys? Sean Ross Sapp, managing editor, FightfulMMA.com. Now, this is a heavy pro wrestling weekend, but we got stuff on the boxing end, Logan Paul and KSI, but also a UFC show over in Russia. Now, there's a real good chance you haven't heard of a lot of people on this show, but this is a pretty decent show for some afternoon MMA. We're going to go through some betting odds. I'm going to share my predictions on this show. Davey Grant, a plus 165 against Gregory Popov, a minus 190. I like where that's at. I like where the odds are. I have Popov emerging victorious there. Alexander Yakovlev, a plus 140 against the minus 160 Roosevelt Roberts. I know the UFC likes Roosevelt Roberts a lot. I think Yakovlev is going to end up taking this. I think he's going to get inside, push him against the cage, drag him down, and kind of ride out a decision. That's how I see this fight going. Jessica Rose Clark, a minus 105 against Pani Kianzad, who is a minus 115. This is a pick'em. I'm going with Rose Clark, but I'm talking like 51-49 here is how I'm feeling. Like, this is a very, very close fight, and I love how they match this one up, quite honestly. Abu Bakr Nurmagomedov at minus 300 against David Zawada, a plus 250. I don't see a way that Nurmagomedov loses this one unless he gets cracked, stumbled, and Zawada is able to jump on and take advantage, and I don't really see that happening. Carl Roberson, a minus 115 in a virtual pick'em against Roman Kopylov, a minus 105. I think Roberson's going to take this one unless maybe he had some bad travel, maybe a bad flight. I don't know, maybe the jet lag gets to him. Otherwise, I think Roberson has the tools to beat a whole lot of people in that division, and he's going to be a name that ends up sticking around. I think he'll be a name that you still see in the UFC in 6 or 7 years, and he'll be on the main card of a lot of stuff. Rustam Khabilov, a minus 185 against Sergey Khandozko, a plus 160. I think Khabilov's taking this one. You want to talk about experience. You want to talk about guy who's been through the ringer, a guy who's seen a little bit of everything. That's Rustam Khabilov, and he isn't quite the prospect that many of us remember from when he came into the UFC. And I mean, my gosh, he's been there for. It's weird to think he's been there for 7 years now, since he debuted against Vince Pichel I think it was the Tough 16 finale in 2012. But this is a guy who's beaten Yancy Medeiros and Masvidal and was thrown right into the fire against Ben Henderson, and he just was not ready. And he had his ups and downs and visa issues and all that. But man, he went on a hot streak where he beat Norman Park, Chris Wade, Silva. I know Des Green was there. He beat Cajun Johnson. He was kind of a ringer in the Cajun Johnson fight, but lost to Diego Ferreira. And I like Sergey. Don't get me wrong. He's looked pretty decent. I just don't think he's at the stage where he's going to beat Khabilov, even though they're matched up pretty well in experience. I think that Rustam's experience is a little bit higher level. Not a little bit, a lot of it. Dalcha Lungabula, a plus 300. He's going to lose to Magomed Ankalaev, who is a minus 360. Not giving Dalcha much of a shot here. I mean, everybody's got a shot, but Ankalaev is really, really good and is a name that I see emerging in the light heavyweight division. They could have done a lot worse in matching this up since Dalcha won his UFC debut earlier this year with that finish, because he dropped Townsend with that left cross, and it was a thing of beauty. But I think that Ankalaev's going to win here. Kidson Abreu, a plus 165 underdog against Shamil Gamzatov. I have Gamzatov taking this one. Anthony Rocco Martin, a plus 130 against Ramazan Emeev. Ramazan Emeev is pretty good. Rocco Martin is very, very tough. And I don't know if his toughness is enough to carry him through this, but until he ran into Damian Maia earlier this year, he had won 4 in a row. He had a real good year between April 2018 and March of 2019. And even before that, he lost a split decision to Olivier Aben-Mercier, and he had a 3-fight winning streak before that. I would go as far as to say he had a really, really good 3-year stretch after stuttering an awful lot in the UFC. This is a guy who has fought with his back against the wall. He lost his first 2 UFC fights, and then I think he lost 3 of his first 4. So the guy could have been cut years and years ago, but fought back and had been a pretty consistent fighter. I don't know if that's enough to overcome the skill set that Emeev has, and at 32, he's looking to just get out there and become a champion and become a contender. And the thing is, Emeev has had trouble getting into the cage. He had an injury earlier this year. He had a lot of visa issues. So he's finally getting in the cage after missing a year. Man, I think that plus 130 line for Rocco Martin is right where it should be, all things considered, because of that. Ed Herman, a plus 135 against Khades Ibragimov. I've got Ibragimov winning this one. All due respect to Ed Herman. Again, a tough guy to beat. And this is one of those fights where just the insane experience edge of Ed Herman, almost 40 fights, could end up getting him the win, because he's facing a 24-year-old, pretty raw talent who got beaten in the 3rd round via a standing guillotine, I think it was. And as we've seen with a lot of his fights, they don't go to the scorecards. Ed Herman can go to the scorecards. We know he can. It doesn't always work out for him. It almost never does these days when he goes to the scorecards. But I look at Ed Herman and his experience, and I'm like, man, 39 years old, this deep into it. He just beat Pat Cummins, so, I mean, he's still got it. And this was a not the original fight. Herman was supposed to face Antigulov. I like the plus 135 here as well. Like, I can't just give Ibragimov this just... How do I put it into words? I just can't give this to him as a definite or anything remotely resembling a definite at this point. Danny Roberts at plus 185 against Zelim Imadaev. I have Imadaev taking this one. Alexander Volkov, a minus 260. Greg Hardy, a plus 220. That is a generous line for Greg Hardy. I think that Alexander Volkov is going to beat the snot out of Greg Hardy. And if Greg Hardy wins this, you got to give him another top name. If something happens and Greg Hardy ends up winning this fight, you got to give him a top name. Volkov is, I don't want to say he is a top name, but, I mean, he was riding a 6-fight winning streak over some pretty good names. Attila Vey, Timothy Johnson, Roy Nelson, Stefan Struve, Fabricio Verdum, until he ran into Derek Lewis. He's not been in the cage in over a year. He's got to get a win here. If Volkov does not beat Greg Hardy, he is not relevant in the top 10 of this division anytime soon, as much as that sucks to say. Maybe in a year and a half, 2 years. But this is a guy who's beaten Blagoy Ivanov in the past, beat Brett Rogers back in the day. Beat Rico Rodriguez when Rico Rodriguez was on his tour, so to speak. And at the same time, if Greg Hardy, the amazing piece of trash that he is, emerges victorious, well, my God, man, we're looking at 7 fights where he hasn't really lost. He got the illegal knee and the no contest, and this is all pro, but we're talking about across 10 fights, amateur and pro, he'd be undefeated. And not only that, in 2 years, that would be very impressive. The no contest was not impressive. The illegal knee was not impressive. The Juan Adams fight was. That's where I took notice and said, okay, maybe he could be something. But here's the hoping that Alexander Volkov knocks out that piece of trash. Calvin Kattar, a plus 250 against a minus 300 Zabit Magomedshapriov. Zabit's really good, man. He's really good, and he's probably next in line. He's won 5 in a row. He beat Jeremy Stevens last time out. But after this, all due respect to Calvin Kattar, who's looked good, won 2 in a row. I think he's won 4 out of his 5 UFC fights. Magomedshapriov would need like a top 5, top 3 opponent, I think, in order to just get him ready for that possible title fight. Because Calvin Kattar's at number 11. Zabit is number 5. Gotta get a win over somebody that more people know, so to speak. This fight was supposed to happen last month, but Magomedshapriov had to withdraw, and they rescheduled it for this month. But hey, guys, join our live coverage. Leave a thumbs up on this video. Subscribe. Let us know your picks. We're out.